So we've established why the United Nations has no locus standi to be lecturing anyone on nuclear weapons. Let me get you more facts and figures. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, or SIPRI as it is known, there were 13,865 nuclear weapons at the start of this year. These weapons were held by just 9 countries across the world: the US, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea. Next question. Who holds how many nuclear weapons? Russia has 6,500 nuclear weapons. The US has a little less, 6,185. Between these two Cold War rivals, they hold more than 91% of all the nuclear weapons in the world. France is third on the list with 300 nuclear warheads. China comes a close fourth. The United Kingdom has 200 of them, while both India and Pakistan possess about 150 each. Israel has less than 100 such weapons. North Korea possesses anywhere between 20 to 30. This is a rough estimate. The US and Russia have been reducing their nuclear weapon stockpiles, or so they say. Compared to 2018, this year the number of nuclear weapons has come down by 600, but this figure can be misleading. Advanced weapons are deadlier. You do not need too many of them. And all the 9 countries are modernizing their nuclear arsenal. And that brings us to the defense budgets. How much are they spending, and who is spending the most on nuclear weapons? This is a difficult question because countries do not disclose data on nuclear budgets. Here's a rough estimate. According to a congressional budget report, the US plans to spend nearly $500 billion on its nuclear forces till 2025. This comes to nearly $50 billion every year only on nukes. Nuclear spending amounts to nearly 7% of the entire defense budget in America. What about Russia? How much is Russia spending on nuclear weapons? According to a SIPRI report, Russia has spent $326 billion since 2011 on procuring and modernizing its nuclear weapons. This amounts to nearly $32 billion every year. Russia spends more than 13% of its budget, its defense budget, on nuclear weapons. Russia and America are the biggest spenders, evidently. Other countries pale in comparison. For instance, the UK plans to spend $3.8 billion a year on nuclear weapons. France says it will spend $28 billion on nuclear weapons between now and 2023. That's about $7 billion every year. That's roughly the same amount that China is spending on nukes. India's budget is slightly lower. Pakistan spends more than $3 billion a year on nuclear arsenal. As far as Israel and North Korea are concerned, much of their nuclear spending is shrouded in secrecy. Now, it's not about the number of nuclear weapons or warheads. It's also about the number of such weapons being deployed or active. The US has deployed 1,750 of its nuclear warheads. Russia has deployed 1,600. They are active. Last week, the US formally withdrew from a Cold War era treaty, a nuclear treaty with Russia. So the nuclear spending of the US could rise, and Russia is sure to try and match up. By the way, these nuclear powers do not care much about international nuclear treaties. The US and Russia are still part of a treaty called New START. This treaty aims to reduce and limit nuclear arms. New START has limits on number of warheads, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Needless to say, both the US and Russia have breached the limits at various points over the last decade. Nuclear weapons are great commodities in defense markets as well. The US, Russia, and France are the top 3 exporters of nuclear arms, while Saudi Arabia, India, and Egypt are the top importers of major arms. These figures should ring an alarm. All the countries with geopolitical tensions are improving their nuclear capabilities at a rapid rate. For instance, Pakistan is increasing its nuclear weapon stockpile by an annual rate of 2%. India is number 2 on this list. The number of nukes going up in India by 1% every year, and that sums up the state of nuclear weapons across the world pretty much. Now, all the figures that I just mentioned are specifically about nuclear weapons. In terms of military expenditure, the US leads this list by a distance. In 2018, the US spent nearly $649 billion on defense. This is 34% of the total military spending by all the countries in the world. China is a distant second Last year, the Xi Jinping government spent $250 billion on its military. Saudi Arabia, India and France complete the top 5. Russia is number 6. And all these countries have spent more than $60 billion on defense in the last year alone. There are some interesting insights. Russia spends massively on nuclear weapons, as you just saw, but on a whole, it spends much less on defense. At least that's what the official data shows. In contrast, China spends massively on defense, but it is not banking on its nuclear weapons.